Hello, everybody. It's 1:20 a.m. Central Time on the 15th of October, 2022, Saturday here in the United States. Already Sunday internationally. Hope you are doing well. We are here to do an earthquake update. It is late night. I apologize for that for my viewers who are missing this live. However, I am recording. We'll upload this to YouTube when we're done. So if you don't know where you are, we are here on the Earthquake 3D live stream, which is over on Twitch, but I save it and, of course, upload it to YouTube for people to watch back later. Let's go ahead and turn on a display capture so you can see what I see just a little bit better. And I apologize if things are a little choppy here on the screen. I don't have my old PC anymore. Anyway, let's just get on with it. New deep earthquakes striking here. We have a letter D right here. You see it right here on the map. This is again at Tonga. Deep earthquakes are usually followed by shallower, larger earthquakes. Told people that many times. And I have to report to you a new mid-range 6 struck this morning right in the middle of the West Pacific North Indo-Australian plate. Let me show it to you on the USGS map over here. Here's the Indo-Australian plate. And the new 6.5 struck right here where I'm moving my mouse around. Now, we warned for this. We were looking for an increase to take place, the next step up, and we were looking between our sets of deep earthquakes. So that takes me back to our letter D here, and go all the way over, thousands of miles over to the west, and we have our other two letter Ds at Indonesia. So deep earthquakes at the two Ds and deep earthquakes over at Tonga. And in between the two, the halfway point between the two, a new 6.5 broke off. Now that's not all that struck. Take a look at what else got hit. We saw a new 5.1 strike right in the middle of the Cook Strait, or just west of the Cook Strait, west of Wellington. 5.1 that fulfills the forecast for New Zealand. We were looking for the North Island on New Zealand to get hit with 5. Now that didn't cause much damage. Luckily, that was somewhat deep, that earthquake down below the Cook Strait in New Zealand. Let me show you what got struck in New Zealand so this might make a little bit more sense. Here's Wellington. Here's the North Island of New Zealand. You see the red line that goes through the South Island and goes across the west side and then goes all the way down here and dead ends into Antarctica. Over to the west, you see the plate boundary for the Indo-Australian plate curls up through the Indian Ocean. Now check it out. Look at the earthquakes over the past 2 to 3 days. Going right down and across. Now the spacing on this is almost perfect for this to be some large wave where the peaks, or the valleys, but I think the peaks, are coming up along the plate boundary. But the spacing on this, for this to be a wave this far apart, where each peak is coming up and breaking off almost the same sized earthquake all the way across the distance, we're talking thousands of miles between each peak. So that would be something in the ultra low frequency range, spreading through the plate boundaries. And it's going all the way around the Indo-Australian plate on the south side and the north side. Check it out. Okay, now, going up to the north, we go all the way up into Japan, and it's the same size movement as what's going around the South Indo-Australian plate, 4.9 to 5.1. We have our 6.5 sandwiched in the middle, and what do we have up north? Well, another 4.9 and another 5 to 5.1. So it's the same size going in two directions. Out across the Indo-Australian plate to the west by southwest, and out across up to Japan. Same distance, approximately the same distance from the middle. The middle of what? The middle of the whole Indo-Australian plate and West Pacific. Starting here, it's about the same distance down to the south as it is up to the north with the spread. Now we're not done yet because the same sized activity went over to China and India. And I'll talk about India in a second, but first of all, China got hit by a 4.8 to 4.9. Then Russia up in Siberia got hit with a 4.9. Then another 4.9 broke out down here in North India. Now in India, I had a viewer, actually, viewers in India. I was surprised. And they wrote me directly below my video last week asking what to look for here in the Ganges River Basin next to Bangladesh. And I had to actually look it up to find out where it is. I know, no offense. I know where Bangladesh is, but I didn't know where the Ganges River Basin is. Anyway, I told them they would get passed over and that the energy should go up and around through Myanmar and then come back over to India, North India, going from the plains here, where we go in the green and the yellow, all the way north up to the border with Nepal. If you want to hear that warning, you can go back and listen to that from a few days back. And India doesn't normally get hit much. It's normally on the north side of this red line up here, which is Nepal going into China. So normally we're breaking out on the north side in the Himalayan range. And very rare are we breaking out with 5.0 activity on mainland India. And that's exactly what happened. New 4.9 to 5 broke right next to where we warned. So it did pass you over. If you're watching from India, I don't know your name, but if you're watching, it went right up and around as we'd expect. So we're moving in the same direction, out and away. Now check this out. We'll go back one more day, like a giant arrow pointing towards Europe. Do you see it? So we have 4.9, 4.9, 4.5, 4.5, 4.6, 4.9, and then pointing out towards the 5 out in front of it, where it's pointing to, which is over in Turkey. Now, before I get into Europe, let's just quickly recap. So we have new deep earthquakes, and this all follows our solar storm. The solar storm arrival. Now, it takes 2 to 3 days for the solar storm to arrive, and then about 2 to 3 days for that to come back up and show a new deep earthquake increase as well as a new magnitude increase. And even people who don't normally pay attention at all should be able to see that in 2 to 3 days' time, this is a fair amount of movement spreading out and going over towards Europe and spreading out up and across up towards the United States, up towards Alaska. It's a lot of movement. We'll get into Hawaii in a second. If you didn't catch that Hawaii got hit, sorry, I forgot to cover that at the start of the broadcast here. But Hawaii got hit as well. With the same size, by the way. Hawaii got hit with the same size as Japan got hit, as China got hit, as the south middle of nowhere out here southwest of Australia got hit with the same size. Oh, and the same size as struck down in New Zealand, 5.1. Struck out in Hawaii. So recapping, it's the same size movement going out towards China, going out across the Indo-Australian plate, going up towards Japan, and over towards Hawaii. Now, since I mentioned Hawaii, might as well just jump into it and just go show you really quick before we go to Europe. We'll go over and check it out. Look, Pahala got hit right along the coast. Well, actually, I shouldn't say Pahala. It's right next to Mauna Loa with a 5-point something. Now, again, it started, I think, at 4.6, went up to 5.1. This is right along the coast. I need to go open it up on good old beautiful Google Earth. Zoom in on Hawaii. And apparently I just need to say aloha to everybody. And mahalo to all my viewers, right? Okay, now I got it. Wow. Finally. There's Mauna Loa. There's Kilauea. And we had warned the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park for the new 5 to strike. And it struck right down here at Pahala. I'd like to measure and see how far that is from Hawaii Volcanoes down to the coast of Pahala. It's 23 miles. I thought I was 50 miles off. Okay. Well, I'm trying to get it down to a 7-day time period and trying to get it down to a 200-mile range. So when I warned 7 days ago. I warned Hawaii for a new 5. And it took the full 7 days for the earthquake to hit this morning, or well, this afternoon. And that's the earthquake we're looking for. Now, where did it come from? Well, we can just trace it back. Trace the Hawaiian island chain back, and it goes back to the north and goes into what looks like an arrow shape of its own of undersea mounts that goes up into Kamchatka, Russia. And up here to the north, we saw a big volcanic increase this past week. Multiple blasts happening from volcanoes that were not on the list over the past several weeks. And that was like Karimsky and Shivalush with resuspended ash, they said, Ebico and so forth. Anyway, when that hit, that's when we warned down to the south by southeast along the Hawaiian island chain. Now, the earthquakes already showed it. It was coming in, the earthquakes were coming in from the northwest and going across in a diagonal line, pointing basically like a line right into the area that just broke. And the reason it broke with a 5, the same reason that the rest of the whole Pacific just broke with a 5 and a 6.5 in the middle. Because a 5.0 to 5.1's worth of energy is spread out across that distance. How much energy do you think it would take to displace a quarter to a third of the planet on a 5.0 basis in a day? A lot. And I used the scientific term last time, but I'm not going to do it this time because I want to try and keep this G-rated. Okay, now let's jump across Asia. 4.9s all across the board. Points out towards a 5 over here at Turkey. And Turkey, let's go over to the USGS plate boundary map. Turkey, where did the earthquake strike? Right where we would expect, north by northeast of Cyprus. Now, I have a new warning going in the Aegean Sea right next here over just east of Crete. We have a new warning that I issued a day ago or 2 days ago. No, I'm sorry. 3 days ago now. Wow, time's flying. So we're 3 days in on a 7-day watch for the Aegean Sea to get something possibly near 6.0 level. And that's just based upon all the flow. Again, you have a giant arrow pointing over to the west coming out of Asia right now. I'm not talking about my red arrows. I'm talking about an arrow of earthquakes pointing in the general direction. And let's go back to the USGS map, pointing out of Asia, out of here, and it's focusing in over on Turkey right now, which is going to go into the Aegean Sea, up into Italy, back across out to the Azores, and around Europe, which is going to increase magnitudes by a full magnitude across the board in Europe. And now I actually need to adjust the warning for Europe. A few things have happened. So what happened? The Swiss-Austria border was hit. I warned them for a 4, and a 3.1 came in. So it's 0.9 less than expected. I warned the border of Switzerland and Austria. So it's right on the border. And I think that's a little tiny country in there. Hold on. Is that its own little country? Is that a separate little country right in there? Hold on. It is. No kidding. I almost said the S word. Made this a non-G-rated update. Man, Liechtenstein. Transylvania, 5,000. No, that's that. Never mind. Okay, nobody's gonna get that. Oh, anyway, we warned right at the border of Switzerland and Austria, and if I would have known, I would have just said Liechtenstein. But I forgot about you. Old Dutch forgot about you. It's one of those countries. It's kind of like, I don't know, French Guiana or something. It's kind of like Uruguay, you know? It's just one of those things that doesn't really roll off the tongue very much, you know? Okay. Paraguay, Uruguay, you know, those kind of countries. The names you forget. That's kind of country you want to be. I'm not kidding. Anyway, so we warned you for a 4, a 3.1 came in. Now look where all the rings overlap. Do you see? Do you see where we're overlapping with all the rings for the earthquake up at Liechtenstein? The bigger earthquake down in South Italy, which was a 4.9. They have it at 4.3, whatever. And then in the middle, there's a 2.8 at Norcia. And where all 3 sets of rings overlap, it overlaps right here at a very famous spot in Italy. We're at Milan, I believe. Let's go zoom in and go see on the USGS map. I believe we're between Turin and Milan. Yeah. Okay, so plate boundary goes up into Italy. Milan is right over here in central North Italy. And over to the west, we have Turin. Plate boundary dead ends into the Swiss Alps. That's the new spot to watch. And we're going to be going up at least into the 4 level, maybe even bigger. Don't be too mad at me if it gets up into the 5 level and it actually causes damage. We're dealing with a big amount of energy coming in. And we're talking about the solar flare that's coming in. And between that, the energy coming in just with the normal flow and the increase is going to take us the next magnitude up. And if we're already at 4.3, we're flirting around with upper 4 to low 5 up on the dead end of the plate boundary going into South Europe. Okay? And you can already see it coming. Again, you have a big arrow of earthquakes. And let's add this up. 4.9 plus 4.9. What does that equal? It equals 4.9449. Every 4 that we add on, people don't understand this when I'm adding magnitudes. I do need to explain. It takes 10 of one earthquake to equal the next one up. 10 ones to equal a 2, the way we add magnitudes. And that's just because every point goes up by a tenth of a point. 1/10. Okay, it's very simple, actually, if you think about it. So 10 2s equals a 3. 10 3s equals a 4. 10 fours equals a 5, 10 fives equals a 6, 10 sixes equals a 7, 10 sevens equals an 8, and so forth up the chain. So how many fours do we have here? Or let's just call them fives, because that's really what several of them are. At least 3 of them are 4.9s. So if we take 3 fives and add them together, it's pretty simple. Equals 5.3. Because every one you add on goes up by 1/10 of a point. Do you follow me now? It's pretty easy to add them together. So if we take 3 fives, we add them together, equals 5.3. Add in the other fours, we can add on another few decimal points onto it, but we're already up at that 5.3 level, and we're going into Europe, so we're going to go the next magnitude up, and lo and behold, that'll take us up to 5.3. And then we look where the rings overlap, right out at the tail end of this. And the tail end of it goes right up into Italy before it goes back down across the coast of Spain and tries to make its way out to the Azores, to Iceland, Svalbard, and Jan Mayen. So far, only the area south of Iceland's being hit, and that's going to change. So next warning does not expire yet for a few more days. Iceland is still due to be hit, and that should also go up into the upper 5 level, mid-range to upper 5, maybe 5.3 to 5.9. And they may even mistake that for new incoming volcanic, which is what actually normally happens when a new seismic comes into there, a new push. They think it's going to be eruption. But anyway, now, recapping, same-sized earthquakes going down to New Zealand. Same-sized earthquakes going across the Indo-Australian plate. Same-sized earthquakes going across out towards China. Same-sized earthquakes going up towards Japan. And I mean exactly the same size, down to a hair of a point of one another, all the way over to Europe. Proof that the whole planet is moving on the same basis, with the biggest of the activity, the 6.5, 1 magnitude higher, sandwiched between all of our deep earthquakes. Why? Think of these deep earthquakes like people lifting on the underside of something. Let's go back to the USGS map. People lifting on the underside of the plate, for instance, over here in the Pacific, or the Indo-Australian plate. People lifting here, people lifting here, and in some cases, further up to the north, following our other letter Ds. But if you have 2 groups of people that are lifting on the underside of a giant slab of stone, and they're levering in on the underside, they all have levers and they've stuck them underneath, and they're leveraging in and they're pushing down on their levers, and the levers are pushing up on the underside. The middle points between where all the people are lifting are going to come under the most extreme stress, no matter what you're lifting on, whether it's small or large. And in this case, it's massive, and it's not people, it's big, deep earthquakes that are coming up on the underside of the plate, and the big, deep earthquakes are coming up after the solar storm arrives and excites whatever it is down there, okay? Alaska, 2 days ago, you actually had movement. It's marked in pink here. Here's what's moved since the pinkish and red earthquakes from a few days ago. You see it's gone somewhat quiet in Alaska, or has it? We need to go check the Volcanic Ash Advisory Center at this point, because there's something else going on. Alade volcano showed back up over in the west-northwest Pacific in the Kuril Islands, but I caught that there was another volcano on here. Let's see, Katmai and Taal. These are new additions to the list that we have not seen in a while. So with Katmai, Alade, and Taal all in the past week, let's go back and show you where Katmai is. Katmai is right here, quite literally across from Kodiak Island, literally across from where I issued the warning. The volcano that I brought up and actually couldn't pronounce properly the first time. Let me show you just where it is. And for the chance to have this volcano show back up on a list this past week, come on. So here is Katmai. Well, it's not an island, but it's a large volcano right next to Kodiak Island. Prior to 1912, no measured eruptive activity, right? Okay, whatever. Now, over to the west, we go over here, and Alade volcano. I don't know exactly where it is here in the group. I could probably look it up and go find out. No, I'm sorry. Alade is further down in here. Let's go look it up. Screw it. Hold on. I was close. Trying to find it in all that gobbledygook's going to be next to impossible. The aid of AI. Thanks. Okay, there's Alade volcano. It's right next to Ebeco or Ibeco, however you want to say that volcano. Now, Taal is down in the Philippines. So let's recap now. Hold on. I mean, we got to talk about this. Katmai volcano there in Alaska. We jump over here. We're at the peninsula that erupted this past week, which now doesn't have jack squat on it. Instead, right down to the south, Alade, right where the rings are overlapping. Then we jump over Japan. We get down to Suwanizajima, Sakurajima, and Nishinoshima. Suwanizajima and Sakurajima are side by side right here in South Japan. And then we jump right over across the plate boundary, and that's where the other volcano, Nishinoshima, is. They are parallel to each other pretty much right here on the plate south of Japan. So one more time, recap. Volcano here, up in Alaska. Volcano here, over at South Kamchatka. 2 here in South Japan. 1 over on the ridge. And then we go down to the south and we get to Taal volcano in the Philippines, which is hardly ever on the list. And I mean, maybe it's been on there a few times this year, but Taal, let's go. Taal, Philippines. I gotta go look it up, guys. It's only a 2,000-foot blast, but this thing's put off big blasts before, so have others nearby. There it is. Now, you'll see videos on YouTube of hikers that go into the crater, or they'll be on the opposite side of the crater when it's erupting. So they take people up into this volcano. They'll be on the outside edge here, watching it erupt out of the center of the lake. But next to it, over to the east and up to the east by northeast, you have famous Pinatubo. What others have erupted recently? I want to say Taal is one of the only ones that have been in here that have erupted in the past several months. Anyway, anytime I see a new volcano on the list, we've got to pay attention. So now that's 2 to 3 new volcanoes on the list, plus a new 6.5, plus new deep earthquakes, plus whole plate shifting in a day, following the solar storm, plus Hawaii getting hit as expected. Alaska has now gone quiet in comparison to where we'd expect, and we'll get into the forecast by the end of this update. But first, I've got to quickly cover Central America, South America, all the way down to South Sandwich. We have to cover Caribbean and the United States. So let's do that. Central America, guess what size earthquake struck? Well, here, let me turn it so you can see it. See that? 4.9? 4.9 to 5.0? Gee, hold on. How many is that now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 2 days. All right, guys. 2 days, guys. It's just not even point in even counting a lot. And we're not done yet. But anyway, 4.9 to 5.1 striking here on the coast of Mexico, smack in the middle of all the other 4s, spreading out to the north and to the south. And the spacing on this says VLF, very low frequency. So we went from ultra low frequency that I talked about across the whole plate, where it was spaced out thousands of miles apart, spreading out across huge distances. And then we focus in here on the plate boundary at Central America and look at the spacing on these. Again, I would say they're somewhat equal, but they're only a few hundred miles apart. Now wait, a few thousand miles apart, spreading out across the West Pacific. We go up and around and we come across the whole Pacific and we get over here, and on this side of the plate, we're moving in VLF, very low frequency, a higher frequency, if you will. We're coming up. The spacing isn't as wide apart. It's not as long as a wave, if you will. And the magnitudes on this speak to itself. The middle point getting the biggest, and then the same sized earthquakes going out in each direction. Down to the south, the same thing happened over the past 2 days. So I have to show you 2 days worth of earthquakes here. There we are. So up to the north, 4.5 struck Ecuador. Ecuador was the spot we talked about yesterday that didn't have, or 2 days ago, that didn't have earthquakes in it, and it's now been filled in with the new same-sized earthquake that's striking on the north side, 4.4 to 4.9. In this case, they have it at 4.5. Down to the south, we have our 4.7 to 4.9 that struck, and there was some debate on that, but whatever. They got it at 4.7 now. 4.9 came rolling in, downgraded to 4.7. And in the middle, volcanic eruption. Sabancaya volcano. That's a regular erupter on the list, by the way. Down to the south, Chile stopped erupting at Nevado de Chilean, and instead, a new 5.2, 5.3 came rolling in, down on the plate boundary, down at South Sandwich. So really what happened, we were erupting here, down in Chile, Nevado de Chilean, Flow went down around underneath, came back up as expected. I talked about this in my last two updates, and now we're breaking down at the southeast tip. And I talked about looking for that. I'm like, I was a 50-50. Are we going to break there on the coast, or are we going to go down around and underneath and come up all the way thousands of miles over to the east? This is 500-mile key down here, so we're at 500, 1,000, 2,000 miles over to the east. We come back up with about the same size that went in. Caribbean, let's go over here into the Eastern Caribbean. Multiple fours struck since our break in the middle last week. And if you're not aware, last week we saw a slight break here right around Dominican Republic, going over on the north side of Puerto Rico. But at this point, I want to draw your attention to the shape of the earthquakes here and what's happened in the last day. So the shape of the earthquakes, the pattern that the earthquakes are making here, laid out over the course of a week, spreading around from the south side of Puerto Rico, going between Dominican Republic, going back down to this. Now, this is a 20,000-foot drop-off here. And really, to see it better, I could take you over to Google Earth and we could look at Puerto Rico. I want you to remember that shape of the earthquakes, though, how it's going around Puerto Rico. So we started back here on this side. You'd have to go back to my last two updates ago, and I was talking about a line of earthquakes going all along the south side of Puerto Rico. And that prompted me to issue a warning on the north side of Puerto Rico, over here at the deepest part of the drop-off. And it's a 20,000-foot drop-off. Think of this like a rise, like the Colorado Rockies, where Puerto Rico is really sitting up on top of a mountain range at the very top. And the mountain range goes down 20,000 feet to this fold. 25,000, actually. 25,000 down. So, warning on the deepest part of the fold. Why? Let's trace it back. The fold is the plate boundary. The fold goes back over to the west. The fold goes, the 20,000-foot drop-off, whatever you want to call it, the trench, goes over to the west and meets back up all the way over at Guatemala, where we meet up with the plate boundary, and go back out to the Pacific. The energy comes from the Pacific. It goes over to Central America, where we have our spaced-out earthquakes all the way along the coast. Going over to the east is the plate boundary, where a new break is going to take place soon. I think it's pretty obvious. We're going all the way around Puerto Rico with a series of earthquakes that now the magnitudes have crept up into the 3.0 range. We're looking at the last week's worth of quakes, but I can just turn it down the last 2 days, and it's a stack of quakes going pretty big, and it's all 2s and 3s, not just 0s and 1s like sometimes we see. So over the course of a week, multiple swarms broke out. I'm thinking we're going to go pretty big here, thinking it's probably going to go into the mid-range 5 level. And the way I'm coming to that determination, we have all these 4s. So let's add them together, 4.9 plus 4.7. That alone right there takes us to 5. Adding in all the other 4s, maybe we could take it to 5.1 to 5.2. Then we have Popocatépetl volcano erupting, Fuego erupting. Those are 2 more 5s worth of energy added in. All of a sudden, we're at a mid-range 5s level worth of energy. Oh, and that doesn't even count in all the other 2s and 1s and so forth that we could add in as just extra energy that's already in there. I mean, if Hawaii's going 5, you got to expect that it's going to be going all the way over, coming out of the Pacific. Another way to look at it, the whole planet's going on a 5 level. Europe, the West Pacific, North Pacific, South Pacific, North Indo-Australian, South Indo-Australian, Japan, Kamchatka, Alaska, and Central America. Okay. Oh, and South Sandwich in South America and Antarctica. Now, USA. Let's get into it, guys. Let's go over here to the West Coast. Go check it out, see what's going on. 4.4 to 4.5 came rolling in on the South Juan de Fuca fracture zone. Now, this magnitude, this earthquake, let's get all the smallers out of there and just show you the stepping stone path of 4s going across now. So, to see this path of earthquakes, to see the stepping stone path, you almost have to look from so far away. This is not me doing anything cherry-picking quakes or anything. We're looking at 4.0 greater in the last 36 hours, going from Japan all the way over to the United States. Do you notice anything about the spacing on these quakes? Well, it's just what I told you about the spacing going across over to the West Pacific and beyond. That it's a very low frequency going to ultra low frequency back to ultra low. We're very far spaced out. thousands of miles with the same size peaks of a wave. Once we get beyond the bend of the plate here, do you see how it makes a sharp bend and goes across? This is where it divided, went down to Hawaii. Where it divided and went down to Hawaii, the wave, where the flow divided and went down to Hawaii, everything east took a step down. So we're at 5 to 5.1 with a 6.5 sandwiched in the middle of it all. Going up, around, over here. Once we get here, boom, divide down to Hawaii. Hawaii gets a 5 to 5.1, and 4s go over to the east, over to the United States. So we divide out, go down where the USGS has nothing on their map, down to Hawaii, and we go over and down into the Juan de Fuca fracture zone. Do you see this? So the flow came up, over, down into the Juan de Fuca, and what part of the Juan de Fuca broke? The south part. And not just the south part anywhere, it broke right off the coast of northwest California or southwest Oregon, right out in here. And I had issued a warning for northwest California to be on watch for upper 4.0 level activity. And here we are. Mid-range 4 came rolling in. Now looking at the 3s, 2s, and 1s going across the plate, we have a dramatic increase in the number of earthquakes, including in Oklahoma and Texas. And many of my viewers, actually even people who aren't viewers, showing up below my video, talking about their houses shaking in Oklahoma. We'll talk about that in a second. But look at Yellowstone. Yellowstone's got a nice stack of earthquakes in the last day. And this is different than the thousands of tremors that can happen there every day. Tremors are small vibrations as the magma chamber is perturbed by the magma. But in this case, these are earthquakes up above it. So we're talking down at like 1 and 2 kilometers up above the magma chamber as it comes up close to the surface. And it's right on this, the edge of the North American craton. The craton. Now, this is a thing I'm going to be talking about for the rest of the update. So you just got to memorize this now. Look at the rusty brownish orangish color there, and look at the arrows. Now look at the northwest, up in the upper left-hand corner, if you don't know your directions. Northwest, and we're right along the edge of the craton at Yellowstone. Now look at the purple part. Do you see how it goes out to California? Look where it goes into California. It goes all the way out to the California border. And at the California-Nevada border, guess what's there? A supervolcano. So now wait, there's a supervolcano on the edge of the purple part, and there's a supervolcano on the edge where the purple part meets the rusty brownish part. So what's up with that? Well, apparently the deformed edge of the craton allows for magma to come up easily along it, and we can see this with all the volcanoes along it. The deformed edge. Once we get over to the more stable portion of the craton over in the Midwest, we putter out with a lot of the volcanoes, and they form only on the edge of the craton for the most part, all the way up the East Coast. And we'll get into that in a moment, too. But back to it. So what got hit? A new swarm broke out at Yellowstone. A new swarm broke out at the oil pumping operations in Oklahoma. Now, my viewers contacted me about shaking in Oklahoma. Is there a volcano there? No. These are the drill points for oil and gas. Dover, Oklahoma. Thousands and thousands, tens of thousands actually, of drill points just in these counties alone. And the perforation of the edge of the North American craton aids in the flow going from areas like Yellowstone all the way across instead of being absorbed. So for instance, here's a nearby well, a jack, a pump, some old tanks storing chemicals that they pump down into the ground. They'll mix that with fresh water and pump it into the ground to break apart the shale to release gas and oil. And then they'll come in and put a jack in or create pressure and drill at an angle and come in and get it out from old wells. And they'll do it to old wells and new wells. It's amazing. Not good, though. Over to the west by southwest, Texas, I shouldn't even need to show you. We have 3.0 level activity in Texas, 2.9, 2.9, 2.9. So 3 2.9s. But this is just following the edge of the craton out of Texas and going back up into Oklahoma as well. And the craton is containing a lot of the oil and gas. So it is what it is. You drill the edge of the craton, it's like perforating a cardboard box. All of a sudden, we see the same sized earthquakes that are up at Yellowstone go down across through Texas, back up into Oklahoma, and up the East Coast. Speaking of the East Coast, if you didn't catch it, we got hit twice on the East Coast in a rare location that I issued a warning for. Issued a warning for Virginia, going over in to the East Coast, Delaware. Well, actually, I mentioned all three of these areas. I mentioned Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, and D.C., and 2 earthquakes struck on either side. It's the exact area we warned. Now, it's small. We warned for 3, and 2s came in. Not bragging, got to tell you. It's literally because there's a flow going across the plate from the West Coast to the East Coast. So it's not any kind of magic. Anybody can know that this is getting ready to happen if you pay attention to the earthquakes coming across the plate. There's a flow to this, which is a big deal. Let me tell you, the biggest deal on this is that there's a flow of the same sized earthquakes going across whole regions of the planet, and that you can forecast on it. You can plot it like a trajectory of a flooding river or a train traveling across distances. And the spacing on this, coming out of the north and going down to the edge of the Craton and down to Texas and back to Oklahoma, that traces this perfectly. One more time, out of Canada, down across through Texas, back up to Oklahoma. This is just the 3.0 and greater. If I show you 2.0 and greater, it's going to fill in all the points between the 3s. That's all it does. It's like a stepping stone path. Again, it connects the lines between the areas. Even a kid could do this. Let me turn off the magnitudes and show you what I'm talking about. So a 4 out on the west coast, that's the big ring out over off the west coast. Then 3s going into the edge of the Craton. Then 3s going over across the edge of the Craton. And that's where we are today. Now, I think we're going the next step up. I think we're going to be going, again, just like the rest of the planet, I think we too are going to be going the next step up. And if we go the next step up, we're going to 5.3 to 5.4. Sound familiar? Because that's what we're looking for everywhere else over here on the East Pacific. And really, that just holds true with what's going on around the rest of the planet. If I get it wrong and it comes back in at a 5 to 5.1, I mean, it is what it is. I'm trying to get it within a magnitude and trying to get it into a 200-mile area. Now, one more thing I'd like to show you before we go any further and look up these quakes. Just the overall pattern of this, well, it's almost like a parentheses shape in today, but there's many times where it comes out to a pinnacle point, almost like an arrow itself, which is why there's an arrow there going across Nevada and over into Utah. A long time ago, 9 years ago at this point, the earthquakes I saw were making this shape. And really, then I saw that it went over to the edge of the Craton, and that all then made sense. That it all goes back to the Juan de Fuca up in the northwest. So all this can be traced back to up here, where there's no earthquakes getting reported. Where there's no earthquakes getting reported, guys. Did you hear me? Did you hear me? Hello, class. Where there's no earthquakes getting reported up there. Harry Potter waved his wand. Shut it all down. I don't know. Maybe they'll get around to doing it at some point. But they're really intent on you guys not seeing a connection of earthquakes going from Alaska down through Canada into the United States. They don't want you seeing that same size quake activity going in. Man, there's whole textbooks printed saying it can't happen. So of course they're going to try and stop it. I get it. But I'm not going to go along with it. What do you guys want me to do? Sell out? Come on. I can't sell out. I can't. Not only that, they don't have enough money. It'll be worthless anyways. You're going to pay me in something else, some other currency you have to pay me in. Pay me in cannabis seeds, will you? I already got too many of those. All right, anyway, let's go down into California. Speaking of that, let's go down into California, guys. Let's go down out of the Juan de Fuca fracture zone and go down into the Bay Area, just north of, we're actually at the Napa Valley, and we're actually at Cobb, California, which is also known as the geysers of California, depending on which earthquake you click on here. And the reason it's called the geysers is because there are geothermal features there. It's not just named the geysers because they were feeling real geysery that day. Guys, no, it's not like that either. It's not Guyserville, Geyserville, even though it is a bunch of hippies. All right, come on. I'm here all night. Come on, but I'm bunts. Now, let's just recap. You know what? It's a good point to recap. So, the Juan de Fuca is moving. I'm expecting this to take the next step up in the next several days, and probably for us to be going up to 5.3 to 5.4 along the coast of Northern California in the next several days. But right now, we're at 4.4 out off the coast, and we're swarming going out into this. And this is this. Geothermal pumping operations on the side of a volcanic field called Clear Lake Volcanic Field. Mount Konocti is at the middle of there, the volcano peaks of Mount Konocti. Anyway, swarm there, big swarm, stacking up off the entire screen there. Now we go down along the coast and we have a diagonal line of earthquakes coming out of the Bay Area. And we go past Diablo Peak along the creeping section of the San Andreas. You see these? So again, anybody can see this. This is the San Andreas Fault, the most famous fault in the world. They've made whole movies about it. So coming out of the Juan de Fuca, going down through the Bay Area, all this is creeping right now. It's all shifting. Now, a few days back, 5 days ago, I made a video talking about California shifting and that we're going to be seeing a new round of the next level up take place. Well, that started. It has now started. Going over the last 2 to 3 days, we went up to near 4.0 level activity. What did we top out at? 3.6? 3.6. So we already took the next step up, but it's going the next step up. We're going to see a new round of activity break out in Southern California. It's all pointing towards it right now. Look right here, going from the volcano down along the creeping section. We go down to Parkfield, and now we're beyond Parkfield. This is somewhat rare. Now, same time we're going down beyond Parkfield on the San Andreas. I'm going to look that up in a second. Over in the valley, we now have 3 earthquakes over here next to the bulging magmatic laccolith, which is just a fancy term to talk about bulging lava. Well, lava's at the surface, but magma down below, bulging, creating a big round circular sphere here in the Eastern Valley that keeps getting hit with earthquakes and fires. Which do you want to see first? You want to go down the San Andreas, jump over in the valley right here, or on the creeping section just beyond? Or do we want to go look at the magmatic feature over in the eastern part of the valley that all the professionals missed? Let's go over here to Cholame, California. And bruh, it's Kolami, bro. That's Cholame. You're wearing your Birkenstock sandals. Cholami. Okay, anyway, there it is. We're here at the San Andreas. We've jumped off slightly, and I mean by a few miles. And guess what's here? Well, let me show you. Let me zoom in and see if I can find an example first. Here, great, right here. Oil and gas. Texas tea. All across the area here. And oil going into the hundreds of thousands of different wells that have been drilled here over the past 120 years or so. And the earthquake literally on the edge of it. Here's the San Andreas. Here are the drill points. We're a couple miles off the San Andreas, and we're right next to the drill points. Now, why would we jump off the San Andreas and go over to the drill points? Let's go back and look. Here's the San Andreas, the thick red line of the Pacific Plate boundary. And then we come in and drill along it, all along right down here through the valley. Wonderful 100 million drill points. Not 100 million, more like a million. Starting up here, at least 100,000 or more. A million might be an exaggeration. You guys know me. I hyperbole out the ass sometimes. But, I was doing so good. I don't know if that'll get... That's not PG-13. I'm talking about the animal. Anyway, here are our drill points. They number in the hundreds of thousands for sure. They've done whole mountain ranges this way where it looks like sand dunes on a mountain range, but then you zoom in and find out that those are all oil wells. And each one's a scrape point, and sometimes they have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 wells on one hilltop. And here's the San Andreas one more time. Drilled right up to it on all sides, west and east. Doesn't that make you feel nice and warm inside? See the earthquakes go down to it. Speaking of nice and warm inside, let's go up here and look at the bulging magmatic laccolith here in the central part of the valley that all the professionals missed. I had to find this because a bunch of fires started breaking out here, and a bunch of earthquakes started hitting here, and I went to go look at the area, and I couldn't believe what I saw. So let's go see what's there. Zoom, zoom, zoom we go. And there we are. We are on, well, coarse gold, California, turning off our borders and labels. This is a bulging circular laccolith. This. And earthquakes break around the outside edge of this thing. Fires break around the outside edge of this thing. And it's not the only one. There's a few more further down the valley. But this one is the biggest. It's the biggest bulge. It rises towards the center. And right across from it, over here, is the supervolcano, Long Valley Caldera. And notice, Long Valley Caldera, about the same size as the bulging laccolith. So the magma feeder for Long Valley, 1,000 cubic kilometers, is clearly causing a bulge and fires on the other side. Now, Shaver Lake is right here. And you can see there's another one here. You can see the ripples of it on at least one part of it. And it goes up to the top to Shaver Lake, which burned. There's another one down to the south, this one. This one's collapsed at some point in the past. There's another one down to the further south, here. It's made up of its own volcanoes in a crescent-like shape that goes up and around to Golden Trout Creek volcano, where we have two of the same size and shape volcanoes, Golden Trout Creek and Red Hill. Then we have Templeton Mountain and Monash Mountain, and Templeton Mountain and Monash Mountain are two of the same size and shape volcanoes. So now 4 volcanoes. Then Brown Mountain, of course. Over on the other side is Soda Butte, and it looks like Brown Mountain. And then the only spot missing is down here to complete this in a giant oval shape of a caldera. And guess what? My viewers found this. Another bulging laccolith. It's somewhat hard to see, but there it is. Circular in shape and everything. And it goes around and connects. And the only spot missing then is here. Guess what's right there? Let me turn on my borders and labels. Camp Nelson. Anybody remember what happened at Camp Nelson? Some of the most devastating fires in California multiple years in a row. So let's recap. A crescent shape of volcanoes on one side going down to a laccolith, completing over across the fire zones on the other side over at Camp Nelson, making what looks like the same size and shape as the supervolcano up here. Across from the supervolcano is another bulging laccolith that's getting hit with earthquakes and fires around the outside edge next to Shaver Lake, which is getting hit with earthquakes and fires around the outside edge. There's one more up here between Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake. This one. And let me turn off my borders and labels. This is lined with volcanoes. It gets hit with earthquakes around the outside edge and in the middle. And it gets fires around the outside edge. It has 2 geothermal fields on either side. One is Steamboat Springs. The other are the Needles at Pyramid Lake. And this is an ancient caldera of some kind that I had to find myself. How did I find it? Earthquakes and fires broke around the outside of it. Now we have earthquakes at it again today. We'll talk about that in a second as we get down to Southern California. Down in Southern California, 3.6 and swarm outbreak at the south tip of the valley or at the pinnacle tip of the Star Fort. Grapevine, California. I think I heard it through there, but we'll go. Oh, yeah. Another wonderful pun. Yeah, I'm wonderful. Yeah. Thank you. But we're down here at the tip of what I showed you in my last several updates going back to about a month ago. So here's the earthquake epicenter, 3.6 and swarm. We have power lines going right next to the location, too. The big high voltage guy. But we can just skip over that and go to these because all of these drill points for oil and gas. And then you start to understand what we're talking about here. We're talking about the drill points that are on the edge of this thing. The giant Star Fort, which most people thought I was saying Starport. No. Star Fort, F-O-R-T. And the Star Fort shape, I'm not going to get into it too much now. People were asking me to draw it out. I've already done that multiple times. But you can see the pinnacle tip of it here. And I'll move my mouse back and forth on the pinnacle tip. And we can follow it back. And it actually goes back and does the Star Fort shape. And it's exactly 300 miles, which I will measure from the pinnacle tip of the Star Fort. And I'm not doing an exact measurement, but it is exactly 300 miles down to the edge. Exactly on both sides. And again, I'm not doing it perfectly, but there. It's exactly 300 on both sides. 300, 300, and then it really goes back this way. 100 miles and 100 miles, making it about 350 miles from the very pinnacle tip to the very back. And it's almost exactly 350 miles to the very pinnacle tip and back. So this is the star fort shape that I was showing you. Now an earthquake swarm broke out. I mean, it is what it is, guys. I got to show it to you. You think it's chance that earthquakes went down to it and go around it all of a sudden? Could be. But what about up to the east by northeast? Let's go across the Mojave Desert. Let's go out here into the middle of the Mojave Desert, go see what's going on. So they have them listed as explosions, right? A quarry blast at Boron, California. Now wait a second, because that's taking us in right here. This place. They're saying the earthquake is here at Boron, California. But I showed you this place. What's that place? Edwards Air Force Base. Why did I show you Edwards Air Force Base? It's in the middle of the Star Fort tip. Down here is 29 Palms Military Base, Marine Base. And over here is Area 51 and the nuke test sites. And guess what? Area 51 and the nuke test sites getting hit with the earthquakes over on the east side of the Star Fort, northeast side. Southwest side getting hit with the earthquakes right up to it, going right up to the 29 Palms Military Base on both sides. Symmetrically spaced too. Again, you'd have to be a fool to ignore it. I mean, I don't know what it means other than it's happening at that spot that I showed you and now it's getting hit. Now, I do want to talk about the earthquakes up here at the California-Nevada border. Let's get a little back down to earth now. Maybe we're too down to earth with the one before. But anyway, let's go here at the California-Nevada border at the giant supervolcano I discovered myself, Mount Dutch Reloaded. And the reason it's called Mount Dutch Reloaded, I already discovered a supervolcano at the North Pole that's called Mount Dutch. But here it is. Now this thing is, again, I've already told you, it's lined with its own volcanoes. You can see that. Earthquakes go to this thing and fires break out around this thing. But the earthquakes speak for themselves. They're going around the outside edge of it in the last day and a half to 2 days. The whole dang thing's moving right now. And that's different than where we were. It's going up to near 3.0 too. It's not like it's just zeros and ones. But the new thing that's happened here, the one that hasn't happened in a long time, a rare earthquake swarm breaking out east of Reno at Gabbs. Remember Gabbs? Gabbs. Well, you might remember me saying it like that now that we were cracking all kinds of jokes about me talking too much and Gabbs, Nevada, Gabbs. Anyway, here we are. Let's go take a look, see where we are. Pilot Cone again. Fisher Ridge, Pilot Cone. Black Hills North. But Pilot Cone, let's go zoom in on that one. That's the one that people might know about. Pilot Cone with its black basalt on the side. Look at that. Old volcanoes. And again, these would be formed back when, wait, hold on. Nope, okay. It's a 7.9 kilometer depth. The earthquake swarm is all the way over here. And again, when you zoom in and you see something like this, look at this. See this tailing pile? That's a pile, that's not a pit. That's a pile. You know what that's from? The pile's from the pit. But the mining that they do there too is just phenomenal. It goes into the earth. But I'm just going to say it, 7.9 kilometer, that'd be the deepest mine on the planet. Oh wait, just uno momento right here. We're on the side of the second, oh man, this is just going to get a totally convoluted update, but I've got to do it. So we're at the second Star Fort peak pinnacle. To see it, let me turn it back side. The first one I already showed you. Now that I've showed it to you many times, it should just stand out to you now. Okay, the first Star Fort peak that I showed you there. But the second Star Fort peak comes up and goes in between Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake into the giant oval that I showed you before. Do you see it now? How it comes up in a pinnacle like that? They've mined the crap out of the entire edge of this second line of the Star Fort and done this all along it, and it goes up, and it's a triangular shape, but it's a little harder to see. There's a third one, which I showed previously, but I'll show it to you again right now. And it's over here. And I'm just roughly drawing it out for you. You see it? It comes back to a giant crater on one side, and this is not pareidolia. This is in the actual topography. There are 3 giant starfort pinnacles that back up to the mountains, and they were filled with water at some point. And that's indisputable that these were filled with water at some point in the past. Anyway, they are quarrying the edge of each one of them, and the earthquakes are going along the edges deep down below. And it's indisputable that I'm getting next to each one of these spots. It's just wild. I can't believe this is happening. So, recapping, a line of earthquakes coming down along the coast. We're going to look for Southern California to go back up, and we're going to go up the next step. So it looks like we're going to go up to 5-ish, first off the coast. I don't know if they'll report off the coast, but down on land in Southern California. Where are we going to move? Let's find our halfway points between our current sets of earthquakes. We have a cluster down in the south tip of the valley, a cluster going around the Star Fort, a cluster going out to the nuke test sites, and a big line of earthquakes down in Southern California following the San Jacinto and Elsinore faults, completely bypassing the San Andreas and Imperial Fault juncture. We stop at the Marine Base, 29 Palms. Okay, so anyway, we're going to look between these two. It's a very small area to look between. So right down here, where does that put us? It puts us northeast of LA. What is the name of that place? Hold on, northeast of LA. I should know the name of this place. We'll go over and look on the USGS fault zone in a minute, but wait, it's not going back north. Okay, well, we're going to go over on the USGS fault zone map now. Let me take a look. Okay, wow, all right, we're right next to Lake Elsinore, down here to the south. So I'll just warn everywhere from North LA out to the plate boundary. That's just a pretty rough, worn area of 200 miles. And if you know your areas in LA, it shouldn't be that big of a deal if it's out there over to the east in the Mojave. Now tell that to the people in the Mojave, right? If I'm wrong and it strikes anywhere to the west of the San Andreas, even by a few miles, you'll all feel it in the LA basin. So if it's over here, right here on this side, and we're talking about from right there is the lake. I don't know if that, did I get the name right? Man, if I got the name wrong, I'm going to be pissed. Borders and labels. Lake View, Palmdale. Lake Palmdale. Sorry, what did I call it? Did I call it Lake Elsinore? I'm sorry. I really apologize. From Lake Palmdale south. Where's Lake Elsinore? It's like a completely different location. Anyway. Oh, man. That's what we're going to look for. Southern California. Time frame. Let's see. 15th? 16th? By the 19th into the 20th. So we're looking at 4 days. And I probably should even put it at probably 2 to 3 days. All of California already shifted twice. We've already moved over to Texas and over to Oklahoma. We're moving with 5s along the rest of the plate. I don't know if they're reporting the earthquakes out in the ocean. There could have already been a 5 out here in the ocean, in which case it would be imminent and we'd be seeing this new 5 striking Southern California very soon. But that just fits with the rest of the plate, guys, so don't be shocked that the rest of the plate is shifting with a 5 and then you get hit with a 5. This is why it's important to pay attention, so you're not caught off guard. Now, speaking of getting caught off guard, big earthquakes. What's going on? 6.5? That's not that huge. Solar storm arrival, 1 6.5. We're not done yet. We're getting multiple new deep 5s. So deep 5s are different than deep 4s. It's like a whole magnitude higher, or just think of it like a bigger explosion, if you will. And it's going on down below the plate. And it's coming up now, like these happen today. So we look up to 48 hours, 2 days after a deep earthquake for there to be a shallower, larger earthquake next to it. If there's multiple new deep earthquakes, or if whole plates start shifting, it means the whole planet's about ready to go and compensate. Compensate for what? Compensate for the pushing coming up from down below. Recapping, Indo-Australian plate is majorly shifting on the western edge of the Pacific plate. It's pushing on, displacing all the way over to Europe, and it's pushing and displacing adjacent plates all the way up to Japan and over to the United States. So when this starts to happen, it's like one of those, you guys ever play with one of those Chinese puzzles where you move one piece and you have to move all the others in conjunction with one another? Or think of a lake of ice and a bunch of sheets of broken ice, and one big sheet shifts, and the others next to it all start to break and crumble and move with it. But that happens all around the planet this way. And so that's how we're getting these waves traveling between distances. They're following between the cracks in the plates. And the waves are very low frequency, ultra low frequency, and it's coming up from deep down below. And there's some question about what's deep down below. I propose it is like a plasma blowtorch, hotter than any element, capable of melting every element into a gaseous state. And then it's more like a plasma globe, but not filled with neon gas, but still powered by electricity from the sun and charged particles that are captured by the Earth's magnetic fields and taken down to the core, down to the crust. And that it's hot enough to melt anything. And they thought it was a solid ball of metal. You know why? You know why they thought it was solid? Waves reflect off of it like it's solid. Seismic waves. So seismic waves go down and come back and reflect off it. And they thought it was solid because it was reflecting off. Oh, actually, it was passing through in some cases too. So passing through like a solid and reflecting off like a solid. But guess what else? It was reflecting and coming back to them, and they thought it was solid, and they just went with that. They didn't decide to look into it further. So they assumed it was solid. Well, we found out in the 1970s and 1980s that plasma's ionic state reflect shock waves. Boeing has actually patented this. It's like a lightning bolt generator that will reflect shock waves of explosions. It won't stop flying shrapnel, but it'll stop the actual shock wave of the explosion from flipping over a Humvee or hitting a building. They patented it. Now, what's going on there? Well, it's like lightning, but that's plasma. And the plasma, the electric arc, is reflecting the physical shock wave. So guess what the core of the Earth is doing? It's reflecting the physical shock wave of the earthquakes. And scientists thought that meant that it was solid. They also said that it was the weight on top of everything that was melting everything. And I kind of thought about that for a little bit, and I thought that was a little asinine, because if you wanted to melt anything, you want to melt everything, all you got to do is put a bunch of weight on top of it? Yeah, you want to get it real hot, just stack a bunch of billion, trillion pounds on a Dutch, it'll melt. You got to be kidding me. Oh, man. Hey, here's another one's going to blow your mind. You know, we're told that the moon rotates. We're told that the moon rotates, and that we always see one side of the moon here on Earth because the rotation of the moon is equal to the rotation of the Earth, but it takes a month for it to rotate, the moon. Really interesting, right? I was mind blown to read that. I thought, wow, man, you know, hey, if we want to get a shot of the back side of the moon, then if that's the case, and the moon's rotating with the Earth, then all we have to do is put a satellite up on one side of the Earth and just park it there. Put it up at like a 45-degree angle above the North Pole or the Northern Hemisphere, and point it across the Earth this way. And then what will happen is the moon, as it's going around the Earth, as it's rotating, if we want to see the back side of the moon, all we have to do is go on the other side of the Earth and look across to see the back side of the moon. Eureka! I busted them. It means that the moon isn't rotating. Because if the moon was rotating and we wanted to see the back side of the moon, all we'd have to do is park a satellite right on the other side of Earth and look over the top of Earth as the moon is passing on the other side, rotating where we can't see it, right? Whoops! I hate being an analytical person because I'm going to find stuff like that that's going to debunk all kinds of stuff and create all kinds of problems. But there it is. It's simple logic. If you want to see the backside of the moon, all you got to do is go to the other side of Earth. If it's rotating. And on that note, do you guys have an earthquake plan? You ever hear about that? You ever hear about that? You guys ever hear about having an earthquake plan? You're supposed to know what to do when an earthquake strikes. So guess what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to take shelter underneath a table or a desk, right? But what about this door frame thing? Did you guys ever hear about that? You ever hear about the door frame? Get underneath the door frame? We were told by professionals to get underneath door frames to protect ourselves, and all kinds of people do it. But guess what? If you go look it up, let's do that. Should you go under door frames? Oh, there it is. It's a top question. Look at this. The Centers for Disease Control. What? Oh no, the stupidity spread. Oh man. You know, if you rearrange the letters of Omicron, never mind. Do not stand in a doorway. That's what they say. Now, did you guys know that the USGS actually denies saying that, professionals deny that they ever told us to stand underneath a door frame? They are Mandelaing us, guys. They're freaking gaslighting us, guys. If you don't know what gaslighting is, it's just where somebody tries to convince you something that's not real. Something that you know to be true isn't real. Anyway, so the professionals say they told you never to get under a door frame, and that it actually comes from an old wives' tale from a picture from the 1800s. Maybe we could find the USGS site on this. USGS. Washington EDU. Okay, I don't want to go to their site for many reasons. Did you guys know that the lead director of the University of Washington came after me in my fundraiser? Or no, the PNSN from the University of Washington. Yeah, it came after my fundraiser. Don't want to go to their site. Might be compromised in some way. Enough of that. Enough of this conspiracy crap. You're supposed to have an earthquake plan and know what to do when an earthquake strikes. Let's be serious for like 2 seconds. We're on the edge of a possible large earthquake. We have not seen any large earthquake activity since the solar flare's arrival. 6.4 is way, way, way low when I'm looking for something potentially to go up to 8. If you want to know where we're watching, none of the warned areas have changed when it comes to a large earthquake. So in the large earthquake arena, 8.0 level is where we're going in the next several days, I think. And I think we're down between our deep earthquakes. But there's only one set of deep earthquakes being reported, and they're not reporting the quakes like you'd expect, or there's not deep earthquakes spreading out like we'd expect, in which case we're looking at Tonga going into Vanuatu, going north of New Zealand with an extremely large earthquake, if the deep earthquakes are accurate. If we're missing deep earthquakes, then we're going over to Indonesia and Papua New Guinea and Philippines. So it really matters on the deep earthquakes, where I'm issuing a warning for an extremely large earthquake. But that's different than looking for like a 5 off the coast of California and a 5 down in Southern California. You follow on that. So we have 2 different levels of warnings going. One for an extremely large earthquake in the West Pacific. That is not canceled. We are like 4 days in on the solar flare arrival. The second, California, new warning being issued in light of the 5s going around the plate. If anything changes, if it looks like it's going to be bigger or less, I'll get back on. If I have to cancel a warning, I will. But right now the spread is going, you can see it, all the way over to China. Europe, you're due. You're going to get something pretty big down in South Europe. Italy, you're going to get hit pretty soon here on North Italy. Near 5.3 almost. Another hour-long update. People told me to speed it up. I'm like, well, look, I could cut out all the jib-jab and probably get it down to 45 minutes, but I'm covering the whole planet. Weather Channel takes an hour to cover like 2 areas with commercials, so be happy. And on that note, have a good weekend. I'll be back if anything else goes down. We're going to upload this over on YouTube in just a moment.